It's the 1st of September 2019 and today is a very multiple expletives deleted annoying day. Why? Well, this is my scratch built Darjeeling B class, and it has developed a water leak inside the boiler. Very difficult, if not impossible, to see the problem, but this boiler has a number of internal cross tubes. I'll have to get my notes out, you can't even see them actually. A number of internal cross tubes, and I think one of those is now leaking, presumably where it's joined into the fire tube. Best guess, the issue has been triggered partly by the extreme difficulty I've always had in lighting the gas burner to this boiler. The difficulty being trying to get the flame to run back to the burner, possibly because obviously the cross tubes are in the way partly, and probably the burner design wasn't right anyway. That resulted, you can sort of tell by some of the discoloration, over the year or two I've had built this, multiple fires and extreme heat at the smoke box end, and I'm going to guess eventually perhaps the cross tube inside at this end has thought, I've had enough of this, and the joint has failed. I think the problem may have been going on for some time. I've always noticed, probably the last year, that there seemed to be quite a lot of water under this locomotive every time I fired it, but just kind of presumed that there was a minor problem with pipe work or something somewhere, and didn't seem to cause an issue, so could never quite be bothered to get to the bottom of it. My guess is this tube's been leaking for a while, but finally yesterday and today when I've tried to steam it, the hole, wherever it may be, has got significantly worse, to the point that you can't keep water in the boiler. All you end up with is a large puddle. Nothing for it but to take the boiler off. I've removed some of the extraneous bits and pieces, but getting the boiler off is going to be quite a faff, and then of course I've got to make a new one, because I know of no way to, if I'm right about the internal tube, I know of no way to really repair that. It's impossible. This boiler is all silver soldered and just can't be done. About half an hour and the old boiler is off. However, making a new one and refitting that to the chassis in the hope that all the dimensions are right is unlikely to be such a joyous affair. You can see all the discoloration around the exhaust pipe here, which is evidence of the smoke box fires, which I think are at least partly responsible for the overheating of this boiler and the subsequent tube failure. I'll have to amend the boiler design a bit, I think. Another hour's work. One boiler now completely exposed, with the fittings removed, and the cleaning removed, and the lagging removed, and the dummy firebox removed. All we've got to do is try and make a new one to the same dimensions. The noise you can hear is the extractor fan blowing stuff away. I didn't video this because it gets a bit fraught. I've just used my biggest burner to heat the old defective boiler and remove all the bushes, which I will clean up. I'm hoping this is going to save me a bit of time making the new boiler, not to have to make all the new gunmetal bushes. But we'll see how we get on. They should be alright. I'll clean up in the lathe and make the new boiler holes to suit. But there you are, still at black heat. This whole thing was glowing red hot a second ago, but it's a bit too dangerous to try and video it while I'm doing that. I've put the recovered bushes from the boiler in some citric acid solution just to give them a bit of a clean up, get the scale off, or most of it, before I clean them up finally. The old boiler tube is still, you wouldn't want to touch it anyway. This is nuts, so don't do this. Angela's gone out, so she can't see what I'm doing. What I've decided to do for no reason, well there is a reason, is to disassemble completely the boiler to see actually which of the cross tubes fail. So I'm going to cook the whole thing up with my burner, and then this bit of steel came out of a printer. It fits in the hole here, and I'm hoping we'll be able to pull the end plate off. That's the plan. It's getting jolly hot round here, so I'm going to get on with it. Bit of a rave, but I got the burner tube out of the old boiler shell. And what's wrong? Well, it's poor workmanship, pure and simple. All the cross tubes have got a very decent, even after the reheating, fillet of solder. This one on this side, whilst it's got a solder ring, there is no fillet, and you can actually see a gap. So clearly when I inspected my work I didn't look properly, and there's and that's where it must have been leaking there. The other side has got a nice fillet, as of the rest of them really. So that's my problem, all my own fault. I'd like to say lesson learned, but I bet it's not. While we're on the subject of boilers and facing off tubes and the like, not sure if I've ever shown this before. This is my really quickly homemade 3-point steady. I used to have a Myford 3-point steady, you know, with a hinge and the bronze fingers. Absolutely hopeless in my view. I could never get on with it. So I found a bit of checker plate in the garden somewhere, as you do. And thought, well, I don't know. So I cut a hole in it, which is what I did. Bolted a piece of steel on it, and that's a locking clamp and a little plate at the back so that it clamps square to the lathe bed. Milled out some slots, made these little finger jobs, and again, and I might have bought these ball bearings actually. God, that's unusual. I think I had one, but I didn't have three, so I went out and bought three. They're only cheap. So I've made this 3-point steady, and I used that as part of the process of cutting and squaring off the ends of the boiler tube, and it works really well. So there you are. Apart from whatever it cost me a couple of quid to buy them bearings, everything else came out of the scrap bin and was made to suit. I've had it years actually, and I've used it a few times. Doesn't get a lot of use, but when you need it, you need it. I'm struggling to find enthusiasm to make this boiler for the Darjeeling replacement, but anyway, I've recovered all the bushes from the original boiler, and I'll maybe give them a bit more of a bath with citric acid, but they look okay. I think they're alright. Found a bit of tube, I think it was the offcut from the original actually, a bit of tube of the right diameter, which I've faced off in the lathe and marked out where the various holes have got to go. That's the next job. Also found this piece of pipe, which will be the flue tube. Amazingly, it's exactly the right length. No idea why. It was in a bit of a mess. I've cleaned up the outside. Probably hasn't come out. This, however, is obviously a water pipe with a scrap, and it is all calcified up inside. Really hard actually. I tried to not under power but manually push my 3/4 inch drill through to try and clear the calcification. Haven't got very far with that, so I think what I'm because it's so hard, just can't get it off. So I think that's going to have to go in a citric acid bath, which I'll sort out in a second, and hope that it softens or otherwise removes the hardness that's deposited in this pipe. No good using it as a flue pipe with all that in there, because the calcification will stop the heat getting through into the boiler, so it's got to be clean. New boiler, silver soldered up for the Darjeeling. Not a very good job. I think I'm out of practice with the silver solder. It's run everywhere, that's not good. Wasteful of material. But anyway, hopefully it's alright. Question now is, can I remember how to put it back together? We shall see. In the hard light of day, there seem to be an awful lot of bits to put this engine back together. I hope I can remember where they all go. I suppose I'm going to have to repaint some of it. Oh dear. Right, an initial test run after rebuilding the boiler and attending to one or two other bits and pieces. There we go, condensate cleared. Hope there's nothing on the line, I haven't checked. Looking good.